Alastair, are you padded up and ready to go?
I am. Everything's on. Box, arm guard, never worn them in my life. Chest guard, but I think I might need it.
In that case, we'll get straight to it. Martin says, and this is a subject that a lot of our listeners have been getting in touch about. Martin says, do you think that the style of play required by short forms of the game is adversely affecting the way Test cricket is being approached at the moment?
Well, it's certainly changing the way Test cricket has been approached, and actually, it's very entertaining. Everyone's saying that Test cricket is dying. It's, you know, these 3 Test matches. Yes, England haven't won the series, but they've been fantastic Test matches to watch. In Sri Lanka, they were good. England, you know, 4-1 against India. But the Test match are all exciting, and just because it's there's less draws and there's a lot more result cricket, doesn't mean it's bad, does it?
Did that change over the course of your career? What did you notice was different between when you first came into the England team and maybe by the time you'd retired?
Well, more probably to looking at county players coming into the professional setup. Me and Ravi Papara joined Essex about the same time, about 2003, and I know Ravi is a more attacking player than me, but we've been brought up on, you know, the 4-day game, as you like. I know we didn't play 4-day cricket as youngsters, but, you know, if you're playing a 50-over game, it's batting pretty much for 40 overs and then having a little slog at the end. And our defensive methods were solid. And we were kind of taught how to expand our game. Obviously, Ravi expanded his a lot more than I did. But now if you're coming into the kind of the professional setup now, you're looking at the youngsters, they can all hit sixes, they can all play the reverse sweep, you know, the switch hit, and it's almost unusual to see a guy be more suited to defensive cricket, and ultimately it's just what they've been brought up with. In 2003, when T20 cricket came along, you know, since that day, you know, that's what they've looked at as cricket. So why wouldn't they want to play all the exciting shots? And that's what's changed since I've started.
Okay, linked to that, styles of play. Charles has asked, will you be playing multiple formats for Essex this year or just the county championship? He says it'd be a joy to see Sir Alastair 1 T20 100 Cook against the white ball under lights at Chelmsford.
Well, I think I might play the 50 overs. Essex have signed an attacking other left-handed batter in Delport, and I think he gives it a bit of a whack, so I'm not sure I'll be getting too much of a go in the T20, but I'm hoping to play one-day cricket for Essex. Did okay, the not last year, didn't really play much, but the year before had a good run at that, and yeah, I'd like to play for in the one-day side.
And just as an extension of that, Giles says, can you explain how you feel about the IPL? Do you wish you'd been a different sort of batsman who might have been attractive to an IPL franchise?
I didn't, to be brutally honest. I was brought up on Test cricket was the pinnacle, and it kind of came in later in my career. I can't even remember, was it 2008, 2009 when the first IPL is? And to me, Test cricket has always been the pinnacle. I can totally understand, you know, how it's changed the game. It's fantastic. People are earning a lot of money to do it, and of course, who wouldn't want to have a go at that and potentially earning that money? But no, I wouldn't change my career for anything.
Tom and Leeds, we've all got great memories of that final Test match that you played at the Oval last summer, and just the amount of adulation there was for you from the Oval crowd, standing ovation after standing ovation. And Tom says, what was going through your head when you were in the middle and the entire crowd was on their feet, they were applauding you, and it just didn't look like the applause would stop during when you reached that final Test century?
Well, when I got 100, it was fine, but it was more like the standing ovation when you walked out for naught, thinking, please don't get naught here. It'd be quite embarrassing. They're giving you a nice reception. You're gonna walk off 2 minutes later with no runs. So I was more concerned about almost getting out at the beginning of every session, actually, because you've got such a nice ovation walking out to the wicket. I mean, I've never had that before I've even done anything. So I was more concerned about that. And it's amazing how many people text me leading up to the game, I'll just enjoy the game, doesn't matter how many runs you score. But it really did matter, and it was a great way. And obviously, I think it was about 3 or 4 minutes standing there before the next ball was bowled. It was an incredible ovation, and one I look back with fond memories.
Your wife was heavily pregnant during that Test match, is that right?
Yeah, she was pregnant with a third child, who was meant to be, I think he was due on the the last day, actually. So day 5, she was technically due, but not even day 4 managed to speed it up, and little Jack was born 2 weeks later.
But what was the plan if Jack had made an appearance slightly earlier than planned?
Well, brutally honest, I was actually hoping that when we're in the middle of a fielding session and I got the little phone call or a little wave from the England balcony saying Alice has gone into labour, so I could get off and didn't have to field. But if I was batting, I think I was going to carry on batting. It was a nice flat wicket. If it was nipping around a bit, I might have wandered off. But no, if we'd already spoken, if I was batting, nothing would be told or anything. But if I was fielding, I'd have slid off.
Ian's asked, did you ever want to be a fast bowler? Did you ever harbour hopes of hurling the ball down at 90 mile an hour and becoming an all-rounder?
No, I've got anyone who saw my test bowling. That was actually one of the balls I tried to bowl as fast as I could. I think I might have sneaked 66 miles an hour, which is about 4 miles an hour quicker than what Swanee bowled. So, no, I've got no fast twitch fibres in my body at all. So to bowl fast, you need that snap, and I've got none of that. So I'd like to do it just because it's not as hard as everyone keeps telling me it is.
Changing gear slightly, Ollie says you obviously have a love of farming. How did you get involved, and what is it about farming that you most enjoy?
Yeah, so my wife's family farm, there's a couple of farms near Woburn where we farm, and Alice's dad, Alice used to work with her dad, or still does work with the dad on the sheep, looking after the sheep, and Alice's brother works with the mum looking at on their farm. So I kind of, obviously, when you started seeing Alice, then obviously spending a bit more time on the farm, and just grew an interest in it. And it was, I didn't have any farming in my mum and dad didn't farm. Obviously, I think most generations of relatives a few generations back farmed, but obviously no, my mum and dad didn't do it, and I just grew into really enjoying it. You learn about something new. I love being outside, and it's fascinating, actually, and I think I quite enjoy the hard work in one stretch. I quite like going out and doing your hard day's work, and it was so different from playing cricket, and that's obviously the contrast I think was brilliant.
When you talk about how different it is to playing cricket, how much of a comfort or a distraction or how welcome was it going back to the farm when maybe things weren't going well, or even when they were going well on the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think it worked for me. Ultimately, you never know, do you? Because who knows, if I didn't have that distraction, would I have spent more time batting? Would I have spent more time in the gym? I don't know. But for me, it was very clear. I did my training in the morning, and then I went back to do the farm in the afternoon. There's quite a famous story in when I got my 294 at Edgbaston against India. I think I'd scored 3 runs or something in the first 2 games and was really struggling, but we had a little break, and actually it was one of our really busy times of the year for selling sheep. So you're up pretty much most mornings at 4 or 5, loading the lorries, moving the sheep, getting them ready to sell them. And and then obviously next week I got a big 200. So Alice's dad always took credit for that. So every time I was struggling, he was, "I'll get on the farm, don't worry about the nets and stuff." I think he just wanted free labour.
How much time do you actually spend farming? It was almost like having 2 jobs at some points.
Well, that's what I always told. That's what I always tell everyone. I have 2 jobs. They don't get too much sympathy for that comment. But yeah, it's like anything. If you're busy on the farm and they need help, and I'm at home and I haven't got the cricket or I haven't got any other work commitments, then I'm out there. It's changed a little bit, obviously, with the young children. I don't want to just come home from cricket and then just go straight out on the farm until 8 o'clock at night, like you need to do. But I generally do spend a lot of time, and when I get back here from St Lucia, we'll be right back into lambing. So I'll have to do my training with Essex, and probably I probably will be on the night evening shifts of lambs after I put the kids to bed.
And has there been a lot of time on the farm since last September?
It's amazing what happens with free labour, isn't it? You give an inch and they take a mile. I've been a lot of electric fencing, so a lot of our sheep have been on cover crops, which is a new fad, so you end up putting them on there for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they eat that crop quickly, and then you have to keep moving. So a lot of electric fencing.
It's lunchtime on the 3rd day of the 3rd test between West Indies and England in St Lucia. England have moved on to 108 for 2. Joe Denley is 45 not out and Joe Root is 18 not out. The men to go in the morning session: Rory Burns to the very first ball of the day for 10 and Keaton Jennings for 23. You've got your opportunity to put your questions to Alastair Cook. You can use the hashtag AskChef on Twitter. You can text 811 @tms11, or you can email tms@bbc.co.uk. Mark in Newcastle says, which bowler tended to sledge you most regularly over the course of your career? And was there a particularly favourite topic that they liked to sledge you with?
Not really. No one really particularly sledged me too much. David Warner was always in my ear for a bit, but I think he was in everyone's ear. But no particular bowler did, actually. There's not so much. I think probably when I faced Jimmy in county cricket, we used to have quite entertaining conversations.
Did you ever chat back, either when you were batting or when you were standing at slip?
Not really when I was batting. Occasionally to Jimmy, it didn't last long enough. He just kept coming around the wicket and nicking me off after a while. So I try to keep him quiet by not trying to ask him nice things rather than serious stuff. But occasionally I spoke at slip. But it was you've got to be good at sledging. I think you've got to be that kind of character who is very quick-witted, very quick comebacks and stuff, and actually I end up just most of the time not saying too much.
Jonathan wants to know, Alastair, are Luton Town going up this season?
I hope so. 6 points clear, not too many games to go. We normally have a bit of a dip at some stage of the season. Actually, when Nathan Jones left to go to Stoke, you thought that might have been it, but actually Mick's come in and done a pretty good job, and we seem to be flying high. Was it 19 games unbeaten? So it's entertaining football at Kenilworth Road.
Do you get to watch them at all?
Yeah, I've been down this season. It's they score goals, which is good.
And more time to watch them now you're not touring with England, although obviously now working hard for the BBC.
I hope so. I have only been once this year, so it doesn't always. By not playing in that since September, but with 3 young children, you've got to do your bit.
Glenn wants to know, how much sway did you have in team selection when you were the England captain? Did you ever ask for a player but were told no?
You got your technically you never really got a vote on the selection panel, but there's most of the times you would get your wish, if that makes sense. I know it doesn't make too much sense, but the selectors would certainly use the information you give them quite strongly. The only time I probably really wanted Chris Wokes to play, actually, in 2015, after 2016 against Sri Lanka. Ben Stokes had just got injured, and I thought we needed to give him a run of games in that kind of all-rounder role. I know Chris Wokes is a different all-rounder, more of a bowling all-rounder than Ben Stokes, but he's got a very good Test 100 now as well. But I thought it was a great chance to give him that run in the side. He'd just come off a 9 for Warwickshire, and I thought there's ever a time to pick a player who was flying. That was the chance. And if we're playing I think we're playing Sri Lanka, and they wanted to go with 4 quick bowlers, and I thought I didn't want that. I wanted to have the all-rounder as well to give Wokes a go, and I got a go, and he did pretty well. So that was the only time I really put my foot down, saying this is what I want. But most of the time we were singing off the same hymn sheet. The tough ones for a captain. When I was most of the time I was captain, I wasn't or didn't play too much county cricket because I was playing one-day cricket for England as well. You hadn't seen some of the players that they were talked about for selection. Certainly in some of the opening spots, I hadn't seen them play, so you could only comment on once they'd been in the side.
Excuse me, how did that work? Did you have a conversation with the selectors before they met, and they would take your opinions into their meeting? Yeah,
sometimes I sat in the meeting if I was available, and before the big series, I'd definitely try and go to the selection meeting. So you'd sit in there, because it's quite interesting talking and hearing what they're saying, and also when you hear what they say and then you actually see the player play, then you can see whether they're making sense or not. So, and actually, we all like talking cricket and having theories. So, I tend to sit in as many as I could. Clearly, if Essex were playing or we were playing, I couldn't. Then you'd talk to the coach, and obviously the coach would go, and you'd sit and you'd have your, we'd chat for an hour before, whether it's on the phone and stuff, and get our ideas straight together, and then he'll take that to the meeting.
Mark has given you a scenario. He says you and your batting partner are completely in the groove. You're both all over the bowling, and you've very much got your eye in. The series is won, and you are setting up an unachievable run chase. What do you talk about in the middle during in between overs?
Well, probably like most of the time, just absolute rubbish. Most of the time, if you get in a big partnership, you end up really relaxing and enjoying that partnership and trying not let the other bloke down. So you're obviously talking a bit of technical stuff, but most of the time, you are quite relaxed. So it's a time of, you can't concentrate for 6 or 7 hours straight. It's just impossible. So you've got to really, use your concentration levels smartly. So that time there, just have a nice conversation. Certainly when you're in the rhythm of batting, nice and relaxed. So, the conversation could be anything.
What were the differences in the various batting partners that you had playing for England? Who was the one who always wanted to talk about the game, and who was someone who wanted to talk about anything but cricket, maybe about something that's going on in the crowd or where you're going to have dinner that night?
Jonathan Trott always used to like batting in 5, so he was very strong on that. The last message would always be, let's get to 110 if we're 107, and we got to 112, well, let's get to 115. And he was always that. And yeah, it was quite relaxed actually. Most of the guys were very relaxed, talking about out in the middle. There wasn't too many intense conversations going on.
Daniel wants to know, who do you think is the one player in county cricket that has been unlucky not to get them to have the opportunity to prove themselves in international cricket?
Well, at this precise moment in time, you'd have to say James Hildreth would have to be unlucky in that way. He's scored a lot of runs. For Somerset, 40 first class hundreds, or he might have probably got more than that now, but that's a lot of hundreds, and that just shows he's a class player. And for whatever reason, selection hasn't gone his way.
Russell says, I don't know if you saw this. Did you see the sort of the back and forth between Rishabh Pant and Tim Payne during the the Australia-India series around about Christmas time, where Tim Payne asked him if he could babysit his children, and then Rishabh Pant afterwards actually went and met Tim Payne's kids. So Russell's asking, which Australian would you most want to babysit your children? And I'm wondering if it might be none of them would be the answer.
Well, actually, like Peter Siddle, I'll let Peter Siddle babysit my children. He's, it's always strange, and when you play against someone for so long, you kind of have this opinion of him because you're always battling for that edge in the middle and stuff. And then Peter signed for Essex this year, and he was totally different to what I thought. Actually, he played for Notts the year before, and Broady said what a great bloke he was, and he's a champion bloke, and very different to what you'd see when you're playing in the opposition side. Let Sid's could come and babysit my kids.
Are there other players that you've come across that you had a complete impression of them just because you'd only seen them on the field, and actually when you met them off the field you thought actually he's quite a decent bloke?
Yeah, I suppose in one sense, Jay Durdback. I mean, Jade is an absolute legend. He's very different to what he looks. Obviously, I know you should never define a bloke with tattoos and stuff, but he looks very different. He's really to what he is, really well read and just a seriously nice bloke. And I'm not saying you can't be a nice bloke with tattoos. That's not at all what I'm saying before all the hate mail come in. But he's very different to what that image he gives off.
Jerry says, what would be the one change you would make to improve Test cricket?
Ooh, I don't know, actually. That's I reckon use Duke's balls all around the world.
Because
I think they're a fairer ball. I think they tend to do more for the bowlers. So if you do get on a flatter wicket, you still, with more pronounced seam than a Kookaburra ball, tends to keep their bowler interested. I don't know if they've tried it in the subcontinent. I know the Indians use an SG ball, which is quite similar to the Dukes, but I think that's no disrespect to Kookaburra, but I think the Dukes ball's a better cricket ball.
Thomas Marler asks, as a young batsman, what is the most important thing that you should be focusing on in order to improve your game?
Very open-ended question. The most thing is how you watch the ball. I think it's to improve your game. Obviously it depends what kind of player you are looking at. But the simple thing is, I don't know how well the young kids watch the ball. How well most people. It's a real skill to be able to watch the ball. And Andy Flower was really strong on that as a player. As a coach, to me, are you really watching the ball? Can you see the seam as it's coming down? I know it's coming down really quick, but you're really intensely focusing on that, and actually there's a skill to do it. And maybe in the middle you can't do it as much because you got to relax and play. But in the net, so I remember having net sessions with him saying, it's like when he was throwing the ball at me, he was saying which way was the shiny side, where was the seam, and he'd obviously hide it before he threw it, so you didn't give any clues. And it's just the skill of watching it really closely.
We've still got around about 12 minutes before the afternoon session gets underway. On the third day of the third test between West Indies and England in St. Lucia, England are 108 for 2. They lead by 231 runs. If you want to get your question into Alastair Cook, use the hashtag AskChef on Twitter, text 81111 or email tms@bbc.co.uk. I like this question. Ben wants to know, what was it like to manage Jimmy Anderson on the field?
Absolutely fine. He was had his moments, but Jimmy generally cared so much about play for England. So occasionally he'd have a little strop about something. I'll tell it to him straight, and then he'll be pretty good. He's just elite performers think slightly differently to a lot of people. He's so strong what he wants, and he's so into that battle with the batter. And sometimes, obviously, it looks like he's having a grunt, but that's what he needs to bowl at his best.
Do you ever have to put... You're obviously very good friends with James Anderson. Do you ever have to put that friendship to one side for the sake of the team when you're having an honest conversation with someone?
Well, there was one time in a one-day game. He got arrested for a one-day series, actually, and then we went to Abu Dhabi, and we brought him back into the squad, and then told him he wasn't playing because Tim Bresman had come in, and Tim Bresman did really well. So when I told him he wasn't playing, he obviously got the grunt with me then. He then actually ended up playing the game because someone else had a niggle, and he spent about 2 days not talking to me, but I refused to buckle until he grew up and spoke to me. We even sat next to you on the bus. We always did on the back row of the bus. He used to sit in that middle seat, and I used to sit in the back left-hand corner, and we just didn't talk. And eventually he came round.
Chatil wants to know, what do you cherish more, the Ashes series of 2010-11 when England won down under and you got an absolute stack of runs, or captaining England to victory in India in 2012 when you also got an absolute stack of runs?
Yeah, it's quite hard to split them, really, because they're both fantastic achievements, and to play such a big part in both of those big away wins over the last 10 years or so, it was very special. There's something about Australia, isn't there? Something about winning in Australia, which makes it just probably has to go just a little bit above the other one.
Lendl wants to know if you'll try and reach 100 first-class hundreds. I think you're on 63 at the moment, so just the 37 to go.
That's quite a long way off. I'm hoping to get 64 first, and then we'll go from there.
Barney says, with Ian Bell at age 36, the top run scorer in Division 2, and James Hildreth at 34, someone who you've mentioned, the second top scorer in Division 1, how old is too old to be considered for England's selection, or should age not be a factor at all, like it is with Jimmy Anderson?
Yeah, I don't think age is a factor. I think it's down to individual. I know Chris Rogers came in and played 25 Test matches for Australia, probably starting at 35. I think that's about right, isn't he? So I don't think age should be a limiting thing at all. I think that you are trying to pick the best players for the position, and if those guys have a really good start to the season, they're only going to attract attention on the selectors if they want to. I don't know Ian Bell's situation with he's had an amazing career. Was it 118 Test matches, and he knows what it takes to play international cricket. The intensity you need, that real determination, and really want to do. And I don't know whether he does. That's a question you're going to have to ask Ian rather than me.
The subject of Ian Bell is actually something that's come quite a lot here. If he was ready and if he wanted to play for England, do you think he could do the job again?
Well, you don't average 40 odd in Test cricket without being able to do the job. Clearly, at the end of at the end of 2015, he has openly admitted he wasn't playing as well as he could have done, and obviously he played a hell of a lot of cricket for a long time, and that takes its toll on anyone. It took its toll on Ian, and And he had a really good break, didn't he? He played a bit of cricket straight away. Then he had a good break last winter. He didn't pick up at the bat at all, and he come back and had a really good year. So, it's a really good, interesting conversation you need to have with him about how he's feeling. Does he want to step up into the intensity and the scrutiny of it? Because if he does make a comeback, again, he'll be straight back to the focal point of, can he do it again? All that kind of stuff where. He's done it. He's proven what a good player he is, and you just don't know whether he's got that drive and determination whether to do it again.
Dazzler on Twitter wants to know, why do you dislike social media?
Well, I avoided it as a player because I thought it was an unnecessary distraction at the time. You remember when we first came introduced into the world, I suppose, around 2006, 7, 8. I can't exactly remember when it all came in, and no one really knew how it worked and stuff. And I just saw it, and I thought it gave someone an opportunity to contact me and give their advice, good or bad, mostly bad probably, when I was sitting at home with my family or doing something really nice. And I didn't really want to give people that opportunity to do it, and that was the first reason why I didn't do it. Obviously, I think social media's now changed, people are a lot more accepting of it, and I think the players know how to use it a lot better. And so you can, like everything, you can never say never that will never be on social media, but it's definitely changed the way of the world. It's quite an exciting thing, but I quite like being out of that loop.
So will you be dipping your toe into social media now that you're out of the England team?
Good question. I haven't made my mind up yet.
Would you give any advice to young players on how they would use it? You said that you think now that players are a bit smarter, they've improved their use of it, but would you maybe advise anyone to do what you did and come away from that? I think Moeen Ali said not too long ago that he'd come off Twitter because he's got a young family and he found that beneficial too.
Yeah, I think it's down to the individual. I think the guys coming into professional sport now, the 17, 18-year-olds, they've been on social media. They know, like, almost all their lives, they've kind of grown up on a phone, if that makes sense, with all the apps and all the stuff. So they know how it works. They understand it a lot better than we did when I was playing, in terms of those beginning days. They understand, like, the trolls of it, in terms of, if you put something on, 20 people are going to like it and one person's not going to like it. I think people are more accepting of it. But it's just totally down to the individual. Some people like knowing what's going on social media, some people don't.
Your employers are listening. Essex have tweeted us to ask, when is Nick Brown making his England Test debut?
I thought they were going to ask me, when am I coming back to training?
And when are you going back to training?
Well, after this game. When will Nick Brown? I think he's a fantastic player, and he'll be like a lot of those young cricketers or young batters in the country now. I've been watching over the last year or so, and certainly over the last 6 months with the English top order, that there is opportunities out there, and he should be working as hard as he's ever worked in his game, on his fitness, to be absolutely give him the best chance of scoring runs for Essex. I know England have definitely been looking at Nick Brown for a while, and I suppose it'll be down to him to see whether he can deliver the goods.
That might be a name that some of our listeners aren't familiar with, Nick Brown. He's a player you know very well. He's an Essex opening batsman. What can you tell us about him for maybe someone who hasn't seen him bat?
He's left-handed. He's about 6'2", hasn't got too much hair on top of his head, and he plays a lovely straight drive.
And also, we've also been tweeted by Claire Cummings to ask, are you playing in the Young Farmers versus the Teachers game at Bedford School this year?
I don't know what are the Essex fixtures. That's normally a game I get selected for. I don't often make the final 11 of the Young Farmers, actually. They don't tend to select me that much. I don't know what I've done to upset the captain. A lot of selection goes down on WKD consumption. So that is one of the thing for selection criteria, and availability at nets in Great Brickyll's barn. So, yeah, I mean, that's the problem, is that it's a hard team to get into. Although I did play the last game of the season, managed to sneak a game, and I got a hat-trick, my first ever hat-trick.
We're just coming to the end of the lunch interval, Alastair. So if we can, I'd like to do the quick fire round So I'm going to put as many questions as I can to you in a short space of time, and I want the first answer that comes to your head, if that's okay.
This has got danger written all over it.
Sammy Keenan, who was the easiest player you played against to wind up?
I don't know, I was Michael Vaughan.
Michael Vaughan?
I don't think I hardly ever played against him. I just couldn't think of a name.
Cameron, what is the 100 that means the most to you?
The 235 at Brisbane.
Martin, what is the largest animal you could single-handedly sellotape to a lamppost?
I reckon you could. I think one of my sheep. I reckon I could. So it might need a bit more. If I was allowed gaffer tape, I'd take maybe a sheep. I couldn't be a tup. It'd have to be a young female sheep.
I think single-handedly with a sheep would be a pretty good effort. Toby Trumpet, kiss, marry or avoid Jimmy, Broady or Rooty?
This line's gone funny. I can't hear that one.
Nitish, who was your idol when you were young?
Graham Gooch.
And Greg, what was your most satisfactory or important low score, as in less than 50, one where you had to properly graft when that was still somewhat significant?
Actually, I have a little bit more than a 50, actually. There was a South Africa one a couple of years ago at the Oval. I think I got 80. And I know it wasn't actually the question you answered, but I don't really care. And that was nipping around loads. And I was actually quite proud of that innings, because I know it wasn't 100, it'll never go down as one of the great innings, but I remember getting hit in the back of my calf all the time. It's like, I can't be playing that badly, but it was just nipping so much. So to be able to grind out that score, that was a good one.
Rahul says, best opposition batsman you have watched in your career?
I think Virat Kohli, in terms of he's a fantastic all-round player, but the most in awe of a player, there's two. Ricky Ponting at 2006 series, that first 3 games, he was playing unbelievable cricket. And then Brian Lara got 150 between lunch and tea at Arundel against MCC bowlers. And we had Simon Jones, Matthew Hoggart, Dale Benkstein, who bowled nice little seamers, and then Min Patel was spinning, and he got 100 and odd in between lunch and tea. Unbelievable. And actually then at the end they said that wasn't proper match practice. And I was just like, okay, that's how good you have to be Brian Lara.
Last one, because the players are just coming out. Sean wants to know, who out of the current international opening batsmen, so not playing for England, would you most want to have as a partner at the crease?
Who would I like to have a partner? I quite enjoyed backing with that Campbell bloke, the guy the other day here. He's entertaining all that Philo Wallace era and stuff. We're just giving it a whack.
Absolute final one, sorry. I've had it from Jay Agnew of St Lucia, who is, why is Jeff Boycott's strike rate in first-class cricket 227 when yours is only 50?
Well, if you Google Geoffrey Boycott, and then it comes up as stats, and the first thing it comes in is telling, it says, a strike rate, blah, 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 and it got down to one-day cricket at 446.
Always believe what you read on those sites, Alastair. You used to smash it about.
Alastair Cook, thank you very much for taking questions from listeners to the Cricket Social.